Spoilers for Blood Meridian by the great Cormac McCarthy. Judge Holden from Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian is the best villain I have ever found in fiction at villainy. He is a disgusting human who commits his repulsive life to possessing an alluring wealth of knowledge and uses his dangerous view of the world to tempt those who are absent of direction to follow in his hellish path. He is surprisingly active in the plot for a character who is not immediately known to be one of the main antagonists, which he then uses his hidden danger to drive the Glanton gang forward while making decisions for them without the oversight of the gang's leader who shares this same name. The judge uses these moments to fuel his own desires of war and insatiable lust for the unholy. The judge is able to win in the Blood Meridian. Interpretations from the audience on how he won, but everyone knows his moves to win were just unstoppable in the most grotesque way. For villainy to be understood, the expectation of good must be present. For if there is no good, there is only evil. This is actually completely debunked within Blood Meridian because of the judge. Because there is only fleeting moments of good within the story. Everything is held within a transaction, and everything is held within the expectation that something will be taken or used as payment within the story, whether that be time or money. With this, you can still see that those fleeting moments of transaction and material wealth are still more valuable than a simple moment of true love or goodness shown. This is then expedited fast and horrible within the story, as the judge is able to show his incredible use of skill, talent, possible learned abilities to entice people to his side, while also being able to continue in the world in the same way that everyone else may be able to. He is shown to be a multilingual person of interest when it comes to deal making, as within the story, Glenn only knows English and Spanish on off chances. But because, for the purposes of this, just assume Judge Holden knows every single language ever written or understood, as there are times when that throughout the story, the judge is simply able to communicate with everyone, no matter where or whom they may be. He is able to communicate with them. However, as it will be shown later on, do not also fully think that the judge is completely honest with him being able to know everything. The judge is not meant to be a character that you completely understand. While at the same time, he is supposed to be a character that you are able to understand in the most basic of levels. Judge wins. Judge does evil. Judge does what he wants. If you remember these core facts, you are able to also apply them to the judge being multilingual. In this, everyone becomes allured by the fact that the judge knows all these different languages and can speak to anyone. This one shows that he is intelligent, or presumably very intelligent, while also being charismatic at the same time, because it's not like the judge is saying something that's going to start a fight every single time or saying something that's disrespectful or rude. And oftentimes the judge throughout the Blood Meridian is able to use his multilingual and charismatic nature to get people onto his side, as said before. And another way this could also be viewed as, because the judge does not care who you are, but he can infect you. He can get you onto his side, and it does not matter if your language is from the deep recesses in the mountains of West Virginia. It does not matter if your language is on the other side of the world. It does not matter if your language has never been heard. It seems to be the judge knows it already. It does not matter even during the 1840s. It is also seemingly that the judge is so well-traveled that he's not only been to countries in Europe and knows their languages, as we keep bringing up, but it also seems the judge just is able to know everything. Knows surprising details, in the same way that if you want to try to get to know someone better, you may want to know a little detail about them. It seemingly is the judge already knows. Supernaturally is what I believe, but I will not be putting that part in the story too heavily, or at least in this video too heavily, because you're supposed to read Blood Meridian and understand the power within the judge and know how horrible he is. If I believe he's supernatural and that he knows everything, that's mine to believe. I encourage everyone to have their own opinions on this, or have the same one. Do what you want. But by doing what you want, probably don't do something along like what the judge does, because throughout the story, there is a consistent use of children within not only the judge, the gang, and the main character, but throughout the story, there is a problem going on. Children are going missing. At the same time, when a children is found, the night before, the judge is left bare of clothes. Completely and utterly. Full, not even Pooh Bear. Step beyond. It is horrific when you realize what is definitely happening. Now, Cormac McCarthy is a legend within writing because he is able to make you suggest what could be happening while then giving you all the details of what is definitely happening. Thankfully, Cormac does not say a single word, but if you were able to decipher that he's a bad person, he does bad things, he has a childlike face and hands, Mr. Baby Hands is completely naked the night after, or the night before a child goes missing and no one saw where the judge went, this man who seemingly never sleeps, you can come to the conclusion yourself on what he is doing. But again, the judge is also able to convince you that he is useful. As within a fight, the judge almost never misses a shot. The judge is also able to crush a man's head with his own hands. The judge is not meant to be looked at as someone that you are supposed to like, but yet he's completely written to be enticing in this same way. The reason for this is the judge is a driving force within the story. When something happens, the judge either had an idea for it or was talking to Glanton, the leader of the gang, and is able to convince him to do something that he wants by simply, most likely, making it sound like it was Glanton's idea, or that it's a good idea for Glanton to think this way. This is also compounded upon that the judge is two things within this story, or does two things continuously for Glanton. He is the multilingual genius, but he's also a multilingual, most likely mistranslationalist. That's not a word, but I like it there. The judge is able to convince people of any amount, whatever it may be. And it has been shown throughout history as well that if you are able to know a language, you are also able to change what the language may be saying to influence what you want. It is not unlikely and not unreasonable to say that the judge may be doing something like this. Imagine, within this story, because a portion of this happens, but go with it, the judge is able to convince a mayor of a town that his group does good, that they are well upstanding people with good money to spend. If he's able to convince this, he's just lying. But if he tells Glanton that the mayor had said something in this language, and what he had essentially said was that they would be allowed to protect the city of some kind. This doesn't happen, but let's just say that that's the idea. Glanton may misunderstand of, we go out and hunt Native Americans and Mexicans. But within the story, it could have been a mistranslation, and no one would know except the judge before it's already too late, because the Glanton gang is notorious for being able to dissect people when it comes to combat. They don't lose except for one time, which we'll get into later, and also definitely you should be reading this story by yourself, but I already said no. I already said at the beginning, spoilers, so go with it. The second part of the judge, besides just the mistranslations, is he's always the one to be making deals. The reason for this is said before. If you have someone that's heavily charismatic, people may refer to D&D groups or maybe just be referring to normal life, that if you have someone who's good at talking to people, you should probably let them talk. The only problem is the judge, as said before, this is why he is dangerous. The judge is able to corrupt them from within and act as he may please. Now, of course, someone could say that Glanton had complete control over the judge. I disagree, mostly just because I look at the Glanton gang as one of the best resources for the judge. Because the judge is a deal maker, because he's a driving force, and because he has this ability to be multilingual and talk to anybody, he's able to talk to anybody, he's able to convince anybody, and finally, he is able to win people to his side for what he wants. Now, what he wants, we all know. We all know, and it doesn't even need to be clearly stated, because the judge is able to articulately convey what he believes within the story, within few interactions, not just through actions, interactions with his quotes. He is a quote master. The quotes that have been generated from the judge are insane. Some of the best I have ever seen, because they can be simple and they can be not just villainous, but filled with venom. The words that he possesses. The judge is, again, in this midway state of he could be saying something horrible, but he is so captivating with his charisma, with his terminology, that he's able to just use this to get more people onto his side. He tells in the story that God is war. If I were to say that just like that, it convinces almost nobody. But the judge, with his quote, is able to beautifully lay the story out. If you believe the judge, he will do what he can for the gang. The gang does maybe not fully believe this, but they do subscribe to the idea. They believe that in many ways the judge is able to do awful, terrible things, but get them money. He's able to make them successful. That's how good the judge is within the story for them. And it's because these quotes that he's able to be completely captivating to the Glanton gang, to the reader, to anyone that would listen. Within the start of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story, there are small quotes that are able to be used by the judge that, if given, he doesn't need a full page. He doesn't need 2 pages of a long quote. He just needs one moment to just take the attention to for the reader. The 3 I'm going to outline are, 1, his introduction. In my opinion, the best introduction of a villain I think I have ever been introduced to. Maybe a little bit redundant, but I was introduced to the judge with his introduction in the story, as many people may have been. But I had not heard anything of the judge besides that he is horrible. This was presented to me, and I now know that is one of the best intros for a villain. The judge is introduced as he walks in to a pop-up church. The sermon is being held, and the judge he begins to accuse the pastor of doing awful things, being wanted in multiple states. And from Cormac McCarthy's writing, while also being captivated by the judge's speaking, if you first read this, believe the judge is being honest. Walks in and gets everyone to want to kill The priest. The people may not be evil, but they are able to be swayed. The priest, later asked by one of the gang members to the judge, how'd you get the goods? Judge says, I've never met that man before in my life. Never seen him. Never been to this place. The places that I listed was not there. Nope. Also, quite interesting that the judge who seemingly was everywhere was not in these specific places. While also later in the story, the judge was, again, described as everyone having a previous encounter with the judge before joining up with the gang, almost as if the judge is, again, supernatural. Which that is within the story, if taken as true that everyone seemingly had a previous encounter with the judge, there is no reason to also believe that he has been everywhere, except for the fact that it's basically impossible. But then we are introduced to him, having said this outlandish tale of this priest doing awful things to essentially also a child. You go then to the idea, if how I've presented this would be as good as Cormac, you would then think rationally, okay, is the judge telling the truth or is he lying? At the start, when you're introduced to him, that's the point. When you first read, you go, okay, so the judge was lying. But as soon as you know someone within the story is a competent liar, you can't take every single thing that they say as a truth or as fact or as a lie. Everything is misconstrued from this point, which then only gives more credence to the multilingual mistranslations of the judge throughout the story. The judge being a deal maker, well, how many of those deals was the judge making in bad faith? Maybe all of them, none of them. The judge being this driving factor from the start while also having murky intentions. Well, the worst intentions, but murky reasons, murky everything. The judge is a bog incarnate. There's also then the quote in the middle of the story, God is war. He convinces everybody that essentially to think that God is nothing but war is to be correct. And to think of him as this beautiful figure that is trying to save them all, for this point I'll say us all, would be incorrect for how you should view God within the judge's eyes. Which if you are then taking religious advice from the judge, again, that only goes to show how far you have fallen within his grasp. Because the introduction of the judge is so perfect for 3 reasons, but it'll have to be left for another day, because I could definitely talk about that for way too long. The first is it's in a religious sermon. Why? Well, it's supposed to be pure. The judge walks in and taints it with his oil coat, black oil coat. He's got these childlike hands and a childlike face, but he's massive. What would be described for us over 7 feet tall. That's just to put a number to it. You don't have to put a number to it. You just have to look at him and realize if you stood on a ladder, maybe you'd come out to his eyes, if that's an image you want to have in your head. I prefer to always think that he's the tallest in the room, as if he's supernatural in the realm of being just getting bigger or shorter. And it's also funnier to just think that is able to grow and shrink at will, but he can't do it to his clothes, because that's just funny to me. Anyway, with this quote and the judge directly saying that he wants war, that if you all pray to a higher power, he doesn't say that part, but if you all pray to a higher power that's good, I pray to a higher power that is war. Well, he's obviously saying, if he is saying the quote of God is war, that idea, war can be described as evil, but it can also be described as natural, the want to fight. Which is why he makes good points, because everyone has wanted to fight before. That's not a incredible, oh my God, everyone wants to fight. No, it makes sense. That's why it's so good, but you can't let yourself just fall to that idea, because you know it's outlandish. God is war, but he's convincing. And he's convinced some of the people within the story that God is war. You must fight. Which is why at the end of the story, when they stop fighting, there is also the possibility that the judge causes the Yuma tribe to attack the Glanton gang because the Glanton gang takes over the ferry. The ferry that was slightly foreshadowed, definitely foreshadowed, but indirectly foreshadowed at the start of the story with the Fate Reader. The judge causing the Yuma to attack could be from any number of reasons. Take your pick. But the truth of the matter is the Yuma attacks the Glanton gang as soon as the Glanton gang became stationary. Now, if they were on the run this entire time, this could have just been going to happen. They were getting tracked. They were whatever. Whatever you could come up with, that makes total sense. But walk with this idea for a second. The possibility of the judge using the Yuma to attack the Glanton gang is one, leading again to the previous quote of God is war. We're not at war. We're just pillaging and looting without actually killing. That's not what the judge is here to do. The judge is here to kill. That is a directive. That's what he is needed to do. As him as a person, he needs to kill. That is his directive. The second possibility is the possibility of profit, because the Glanton gang has just been hoarding like a dragon on top of a golden just mountain, just hoarding wealth. And the judge does not want to live like that for obvious reasons, because start of the story, the judge basically is just people, the Glanton gang just walks up and sees the judge. The judge sitting on a rock that apparently, as it has been described, doesn't look like it belongs there. So the funny idea is the judge moves the rock there. There is also the possibility, and the one that I subscribe to, is that the rock was just, in a weird way, destined to be there, willed there, maybe in different ways, in this natural but unnatural way. Erosion should have dammed the rock long ago, should have broken it, should have made it smaller. But if the judge sitting upon this rock writing, the rock doesn't look like it belongs there. The judge doesn't look like he belongs on Earth, where we all are, which is, for this point, apologies. Because the judge is described as being albino. And I don't mean it in that way. I mean it as him being a 7-foot-tall mystery man that is multilingual. Children go missing. He's able to crush a man's head with just his bare hands. He is also able to drop quotes on everyone. He's got a quote written on the side of his gun as well. He's a master deal maker, and he's just sitting on a rock in the middle of nowhere, the desert. They just walk upon and see the judge. Yeah, everything's telling me to walk away from that. That's not natural, which is perfect. But I also believe it's the rock, specifically the rock, is natural. But maybe in a poetic way, the judge was able to maybe convince the rock to be there. Maybe if he's fully along this idea that I have of him being supernatural, maybe he caused that rock to just stay around for this specific moment, to be obviously cooler. I mean, it is just objectively cooler for him to be on a giant rock while writing, and he's a giant man. That's just incredible to see. But them walking up upon the judge shows just right there that he is just inherently unnatural. Like, that is not natural to see that. But they went from moving around to just sitting on the ferry collecting wealth. So if the judge was able to convince the Yuma to attack the Glanton gang, he was able to make away with the profits or whatever else. Now, of course, it's stated that the judge basically walks out with nothing except I forgot the idiot's name, and within the story it's not horribly important, but with a mentally disturbed man, or you could also be described as a disabled man, mentally disabled man. But then there's also the 1840s way to describe it, and that is the idiot. So The judge and the mentally disturbed man make it out of the ferry, almost as if the judge knew. Now, that lends credence to the judge possibly planning the attack, which would only then be now moving the Glanton gang from following the judge to the judge damning them because he wants war, and he was no longer able to convince Glanton to go do the stuff that he wanted, which he was able to do for who knows how long. But he could have also, after they escape all the wealth that was there, the judge could have, and I believe it might have been referenced, but I don't remember, that he doubles back and collects all the money. The Yuma could have taken it. Who cares? Who knows? The Yuma die in the end, not within even the story of Blood Meridian. There's the Yuma massacre that happens in I believe it's the 1850s, which would also then describe if they had that money, maybe the judge rounded up a crew, took the money back. Maybe all the money is promised to the judge in the end, and he just happens to touch it as it goes along, which is a horrible idea, but it's another idea for the judge. This is why I think he is just such a good villain, that he's one of the best. He does repulsive things. People want to also learn from him or hear him speak, but at the same time, it's so dangerous because it can only lead to the worst of the worst. Then there's also the moments where if the judge wanted to cause the Yuma to attack the Glanton gang, definitely did it just to aura farm, because this man leaves the main, I'm going to call it just the presidential suite, but it's not. That's not the name for it. He leaves the presidential suite with a bunch of Yuma ready to kill him, right? Bows, arrows, whatever you want to imagine, right? Even how about this? Go with this. The Yuma are standing outside the door with Tommy guns, just full on have fun with it. Whatever you want to think, nuclear launch codes, whatever. The judge walks out naked with the idiot, the mentally disturbed man, while he's holding a cannon, what I would describe as up and under his arm. Right, that shouldn't be possible. That thing is the whole thing is iron. Right? Well, he's holding a lit cigar. First off, you only ever have cigars in a story if you're trying to show wealth or a sense of, maybe bravado is another way to do it as well. So it's perfect that both wealth and bravado are describing the judge there. And if you ever put someone in a story within normal people and they're holding something massive that they should not be able to hold, that's not needed. But it's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for that, Cormac McCarthy, because there's nothing funnier to me. I say that a lot. But there's nothing funnier to me than a man walking out to what is supposedly supposed to be his death with a bigger gun, with a lit cigar that's essentially saying, I'll do it. And they're able to make it out while the Yuma's looking at him, probably thinking, how the hell? They literally just saw a giant albino man with a baby face. This is a horror movie, but you forget that the judge, never forget, he's got a childlike face, which is horrific. But he's also speaking of all these great philosophers with great quotes, all these like legendary dialogue. And then don't forget, he is holding a cannon with a lit cigar going, try me. I'm taking out at least 6 of you. How many arrows you got? Or for if you had fun with it. All right, how many bullets your Tommy guns got? How many of them can stop a cannon? That is, out of all this, like what I prefer the judge to be this larger than life, higher than life character that is supernatural, that is able to do all these crazy things, that he's beyond time, he's whatever, right? I prefer to think all of that, but I also prefer to think that he just caused the death of the Glanton gang because he could have left. He preferred to cause the death of the Glanton gang because he wanted to aura farm. I personally believe that. And if you want to say no, he definitely didn't, I would love to have that discussion, because if you want to live in the boring world, that's fine. I prefer to live in the cool world where a man is able to not only hold a cannon, but have a lit cigar, and that be the intimidation. Just looking at him, and he's able to leave. I mean, I don't even give a shit what he did with the cannon after that. I would find it even funny if he then just drops the cannon, takes a drag off the cigar, and throws it down to the ground and then just leaves. He did all that for one cool moment. Wonderful. Only time I'm going to say that. Because, again, must remember that the bad of the judge is the horrible moment when you see into the room that the judge was in that there is a child in there. That is... I will not iterate anymore. The child is no longer with us within the story. That is what the judge did. The judge is awful. The judge is awful, and it's not like it's a difficult argument to make, but the part of the argument that actually has to be used of who is better at villainy, I don't know who else. I would love to find someone that is better at villainy than the judge. Because as I know it, there is nothing worse than thinking something is so unbelievably funny, like holding a cannon with a lit cigar, intimidating people that you may have hired or may have convinced to come kill, and then you see what that person is. He's not even a person to me. He's a concept. You know, the main character, the kid, that's a character. Glanton, that's a character. The Yuma, those are characters. The judge is just this concept of villainy. Whatever I think villainy is, I would think of the judge. That's how horrible he is. Someone who is articulate, but horrible. Someone who is strong, but with the childlike face and the childlike hands. I would have to also say delicate, which is one of the craziest things to say when you're describing the judge. But I want to get to the end. The petty dance battle that I had described is supposed to be something close to a funny line while referencing, of course, the judge dancing at the end of the story, because he wins. The judge wins in one of the most horrific ways, because the kid is able to escape the judge. Because the judge, as some people have incorrectly described, the judge just decides to go crazy and kill everyone. One, if you ever use that, if you don't know the judge, he's not just crazy. He's inherently wrong. As everything, he is wrong. Whatever the word wrong is defined in any language, that is also the judge. He is not someone that randomly decides to do something for fun. Because those characters are always more described as jovial or less calculated. The judge is calculated to the point that if he didn't plan for the Yuma to attack, he was ready for an attack. And he saw the Glanton gang dying. I don't think he got the smell of war, like how a shark gets the smell of blood and just decided to go for it. I think he decided, no, I'm going to go get what I want. The kid, let's just use that as the child, the missing children. It is later then brought up at the ending. And this is... The judge takes what he wants, first off. Judge always tries to get what he wants. And yeah, he probably liked the wealth of the Glanton gang for a little bit, the war of the Glanton gang. He probably liked that. But innocence. There's something about innocence within the judge that can never be equal to villainy, to this aspect of life, that you can't have childlike optimism around the judge. That is almost alluring to the judge. He likes that in a way. The kid grows up because he escaped the judge. He becomes the man now. The man who used to be a child. That's everybody, but maybe not the judge, but... The man ends up finding Holden again, Judge Holden. And when he finds Judge Holden again, the judge is almost like a tiger. looking at something that it wants. Just waiting. Now, obviously, this is how I'm reading it, but just go with it. The judge still wants the man. You can look at that in a fight, in the way that we keep alluding to. You can look at it as something that he couldn't have before, but now he can. But the fact is, you can't, within the story, outrun the judge. The judge will get you. But the judge, the worst way, after talking to the man, freaking the man out, the man gets nightmares over the judge and when he was the kid and grows into the man. He sees the thing that gives him his nightmares. Nightmare, the man of nightmares, maybe. He sees this being. The judge lets him go. The kid leaves. And the point of the story, in my mind, is to show you evil. Evil in its worst way. Evil in its most heinous depictions. That's what I believe the judge to be. I believe him to be shown in these ways because of the ending. You tell a story for the ending, from point A to point B, right? If the ending is point B, the reason you are telling the story is because of that. You tell a story for the feeling afterwards of either they want more, or you tell a story to inform or to depict evil. Maybe to depict good, a heroic win. The journey throughout the story is the meat of everything, and everyone knows that, right? But if you're telling a story to get to point B, the reason you're telling the story may be within the story. But this ending, the cruelty of the judge, is everything. The kid goes to the bathroom. He is met by the judge, and it is essentially described as what is left over is, in my words, mutilation, destruction. Everything under the sun that is evil happens to the man. And at the end of the story, the judge is described as forever dancing. He never stops dancing because he's fiddling, which is obvious, again, to my point of the judge being this supernatural character, fiddler, the devil. That's what it would be referring to, but the judge is forever dancing. And just like I said before, like this petty dance battle, the interpretation of the audience is the main point. If you want to determine the story in a different way, in a way that I haven't, completely understand. That's one of the points of the story. But what everyone knows that reads this story, the reasons the judge wins in the end is because he is not just unstoppable, he is advanced. He is stronger. Supernatural may be another way to describe it. He was better at the dance. The kid was helpless in the end to try to actually not just fight the judge, but to stay away from the judge. Should that not be the peak of villainy? Someone who is able to be described in these childlike ways, but be so adult that it is horrifying. The judge is real horror. The judge is real villainy. The verbiage in the descriptions added by Cormac McCarthy, because Cormac has this beautiful writing style that I encourage everyone to learn from, experience, however you would decide to. He's got other books that are not as horrible, but are also haunting. He is able to be uniquely descriptive while also, if you love the English language or you love how people are able to articulate what they want, that only adds to the judge, his level of villainy. That only adds to it in the end. The judge is able to, along with Cormac at this point, be painted as a larger-than-life character within the desolate desert where no one can help you and no one will help you. The judge is able to do whatever he wants. The supervision that you think is there, the people that you think will be able to stop him, they can't stop him. If you think Glanton has control, Glanton doesn't really have control. If you think that Toadvine, others as well, that will be able to protect you, no, they'll just be sacrifices for you. If you think you can run, the judge will catch up. If you think you can hide, the judge will hide your body. Because of the descriptions of Cormac, he makes it more haunting as well. It's not just a medium that can be translated into movie, into animation, and be used just as well. Blood Meridian, one of the reasons why it's so beloved is because it's horrible. And not horrible like a bad movie everyone knows. It's horrible because there's so much of it that we can understand, and it's so beautifully written that so many of us are kept within the story, not wanting it to be real, of course. But there are so many aspects of it that you can't run from, can't stay away from. The judge is just villainy. He's not just only evil doing evil things, but everything he does is for an evil purpose. Shit, as one final point before I get to the ending here. The judge just buys puppies from a kid to throw them into the river. Yep. If you know the point, you get it. If you don't, gets puppies, spends money to get puppies. In my opinion, that's just entirely villainy right there. That's got to be villainy. You spent money when he could have just taken him from the kid. I mean, again, he's 7 feet, crushes a man's skull. It's to the point that I think Cormac wrote that, and with how horrible it is, I think he might have laughed. Because how can you write that and go, yeah. yeah. Now that's real. Now that's a villain. Everyone can give their own opinions about who the pinnacle of villainy is. If you can find a hidden character in the copious amounts of fiction that is out there, I'm not going to be able to argue something that I don't know. But I would love to actually learn about that. I would love to see who is more tempting, more demonic, more powerful, more controlling, more manipulative. But I do still struggle to find a better executed villain in fiction than Judge Holden. He's captivating and cruel. Holden is able to do the amazing and impossible while also being able to do the truly deplorable. His capability to have both masterful skill and Faustian evil shows the type of character the judge is and belongs on the top of watch lists in the type of all governmental and documentarian. To Mr. McCarthy, one, rest in peace. You are one of the greats. And second, with my whole heart, you have written cruelty incarnate. captivated within the carcass of mankind. The judge may believe God is war, but I believe he abandoned us in the childlike hands of the judge. The name that signifies justice imbued by a higher power system than ourselves, an allegory in nature, but disturbing truth in practice. The judge is a villain, and one of the most disturbing and deserving of the title, the best of the worst. Thank you. Sugar on me. Name of love, pour some sugar on me.